Welcome on into another episode of Nate Hit the Foul Pole. I am Matthew Pine, one of your co-hosts, alongside Zach Goodman. Zach, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Matt. Orioles have been struggling a bit lately, so that's got me a little bit in a bad mood. But we've got Ravens football tomorrow and Orioles as well, so that's got me in a good mood, I guess.
Yeah, I think regardless, this is the first time ever that we've had NBA, MLS, NFL, MLB all in the same time, which is extremely unique. Obviously, the COVID circumstances having something to say about that, but baseball was good for the first half of the week. They were coming off of 3 out of 4 against the Yankees, won the first game in the Mets series, looking great, and then obviously, as this team it's extremely streaky. They seem to win 4 games and lose 5. So we're riding that 4-game losing streak after the loss today. But the good news is that Dean Kramer pitched yet another gem and is very promising for the future.
Yeah, I look at every game now as more of an individual performance than I do a team performance, because I think that's what's important right now. Obviously, it's not about the wins and losses in this club while we're still rebuilding. It's more about who's doing well, who's improving, the player development situation, obviously. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, Ryan Mountcastle and Dean Kramer and even Keegan Aiken, he had a rough start last night, but he's been fine. There's been a lot of guys that have shown they're going to be part of the future, and that's obviously exciting for us to see as fans. It's kind of the first wave of prospects coming up and making an impact. So, when you look at individual performances, I think that's where you can take your wins instead of actually a team win.
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of been on that train since the beginning of the season, but obviously circumstances have changed, and the Orioles were in the playoff race, still in the playoff race. I know we'll get to that in just a little bit. So obviously, plans change, and then you have to root for the team, to do well. And obviously, we saw performances earlier in the season from Santander. We saw performances from Ruiz, the 2 catchers, Cisco and Severino. So all that is extremely encouraging, and I think if there's one thing to take from the season, even if they don't make the playoffs, we still have 15 games left, but it's that they can develop these players, and it doesn't matter really who you put in there. Elias, Sigma-Dell, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it shows a rebuild is succeeding when you can take a bad player and make him look good. And I don't want to say Pat Vallejo is a bad player, but he's kind of a perfect example of that. Not a guy who's really found a lot of success elsewhere. He's kind of been a journeyman, and he comes to the Orioles, and he probably has been one of the hotter hitters at times on this team. So when you can take a guy like that who hasn't really done anything anywhere else and make him into a major league average hitter, I'll take that all day. And then when you get guys like Adley Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez and some of the higher up prospects, you're looking even better once you can get those guys developed and put them in the lineup every day. If you're making bad players look good, you can make good players look really good. And that's kind of what's important right now. And like you said, it's just all about player development.
Yep. So, with that, we do want to discuss a little bit about the whole contender or pretender situation. Obviously, if we would have done this show maybe yesterday before the games or on Thursday, I think we would be having a somewhat different conversation. Dropping the first 3 in New York, and that's the team you're chasing, is not a good sign for the playoffs. But what are your thoughts, Zach? Do you think this team can come back in the remaining 15 games or so?
Well, like you mentioned before, this is probably the most streaky team ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a fun team, but it's a streaky team, and it's going to leave a lot of disappointment on the field a lot of times. You're going to have a lot of nights where the Orioles will go out there and score 10 runs. They'll pitch well. Yep. They'll give up 1. And then you'll have nights where it will be the exact opposite, and that's what streaky teams do. And I think that's because of the streaky hitters the Orioles have. Renato Nunez is one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Rio Ruiz. Mountcastle can be streaky, although he hasn't shown it yet. But they have a lot of those type of guys. I don't really look at the Orioles as contenders right now because they're just not going to have these stretches that are going to be sustainable enough to put them in the playoffs at this point. I think the Orioles would probably have to win maybe 75, maybe like 60% of the remaining games if they want to make the playoffs. The Yankees, they're injured, they're banged up, but they're still a team who can hit the ball. We saw that today. We saw that yesterday in the doubleheader.
Mm-hmm.
The Orioles are going to have a really tough time beating teams like that for the second wild card spot. Or it's not wild card this year, but whatever it is this year. And that's just it's going to be a problem if they're streaky, they're not hitting, they're not pitching well, and bad defense is something that we can talk about later. But it's all been kind of going wrong, and that's where I don't see the Orioles as a contender.
Yeah, I think I'm in someone in the same boat. I think this was such a crucial series, and I think I don't ever put a season down to just one game. But I think tomorrow, if they lose to the Yankees, that puts them 5.5 back of the Yankees with 15 left. Versus if they win, which is 3.5, which is way more manageable. I think it comes down to tomorrow, and I don't ever like to do that, put absolutes on things like that. But I think it just, coming off a 5-game losing streak with only 15 games left, that's not a good sign. But like we've said, this team is so streaky they could just reel off six wins in a row. But like you said with the Yankees, they're still missing Aaron Judge. They've been banged up, so they got some reinforcements coming. The Orioles have shown that they are totally willing to promote Ryan Mountcastle, Dean Kramer. Yusniel Diaz could be a possibility. But with 15 games left, it's going to be really tough for this team to do it. But I think the pitching is there. We're starting to see the foundations of what the actual good team is going to look like. Could be next season, could be the season after. But I think the foundation is definitely being set.
It's worth mentioning, too, just going back a little bit to this Yankee series, that the Orioles probably had the most important series for them in maybe 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And they came out there and they've lost 3 of the first 4. And that's just not a very good look. You come in and maybe it got in their head a little bit. I will put that out there. Maybe the Orioles saw they were in playoff position. They're like, okay, we're going to come out there and play our hardest. But that always doesn't happen sometimes. It's not as easy as it sounds. Come out there and play well when the playoffs are riding on, one series alone. And like you said, tomorrow is probably the day that will pretty much show whether the Orioles are going to be in the playoffs or not. It's probably not going to happen at this point. But it's kind of a shame because this is a really fun team, probably the most fun team since 2012.
Yeah, I think the Yankees, even with the injuries, I think they're still a good amount above the talent level of the Orioles.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like they finally realize that they have all this talent. And they should probably perform up to their expectations. Obviously, they went off yesterday. Luke Voigt, getting some homers, and DJ LeMahieu, and it's tough to see because this is such an easy team to root for in the Orioles this season. The 2020 Orioles very much reminds me of the 2012 team. So it's just it's fun to exceed expectations, but it's also hard not to get kind of down on your luck when they don't perform well. But you got to also understand the talent level there.
Yeah, I think my worst fear is kind of being realized right now, and that is being a mediocre team between a high draft pick and a playoff spot. It's kind of where the Orioles are sitting right now. They are sitting at the 9th pick as of tonight, which is which is Saturday the 12th. So
yep.
They are sitting on that 9th pick, and that's not a bad pick. I think you look at the draft, and if the draft goes on the 2020 records, which we're thinking it will, we don't really know yet about that, but we're thinking it will. I look at the draft as you have your top guys, but anybody in the first round you can get, it's still going to be a good talent, no matter who it is. I mean, Mike Trout was picked 25th. Babe Ruth, a.k.a. DJ Stewart, was picked 25th as well. So you never know who you're going to get. Ryan Mountcastle was picked 36th, I believe. So you never know who you're going to get out of the draft. And there are a lot of guys that are picked 9th or 10th that turn out a lot better than the guys picked 3rd or 4th. So, it's okay. I just hope the Orioles can pick a side between being mediocre and being bad, because that needs to happen if they want a good draft pick.
Yeah, I think we've had this discussion, you and me, and in the Oriole group chat before, that you can't be in that middle ground. You got to pick one or the other. You got to either make the playoffs or be really, really bad. But I think I'm encouraged by the potential order for the draft next year. I think it's very possible that they could combine the 2 records from 2019, 2020. In that case, the Orioles would currently sit at the number 2 pick, which is insane to say after the season they've had, how good they've been. But if that were to happen, you're looking at potentially a premier pitcher sitting there in either Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, or the high schooler Brady House.
Yeah, I haven't really dug too deep into this draft yet. I've seen a few names on the top, like Judd Fabian is a guy I really, really like. I think he's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker and Brady House is another one that you talked about. And, obviously these guys are projected to go in the top 10 right now, but maybe an injury or just a few bad outings could change anything for these guys. So, maybe getting that ninth pick isn't the worst thing in the world. But, if they do get a second pick, like if they do combine the records from 19 and 20, the Orioles will be in very, very good shape. Jack Leiter will almost be for sure at that number 2 spot.
Yeah, I'm all about that. And, we'll see what happens. I think, like you said, the first overall pick is not always set in stone. It seems like year to year, Bobby Witt Jr. was the absolute going to be the number 1 pick. So I think it changes, based on performance and various number of factors. So we will see. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even with this draft, Torque kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, Torque was projected like 5th or 6th or even 7th pick, and he just had a really good start to the season before it was shut down for COVID, and that kind of just propelled him to the top of everyone's draft boards. I had definitely not had Spencer Torkelson on my draft board in September of 2019. I don't think many people did. It just wasn't that much of a fantastic talent as he became. And, Heston Kjerstad's another guy that was probably a very big riser that really performed well in his junior season. So you just never know. I mean, the Orioles could end up with a really great talent wherever they pick in the first round. Like I said, Mike Trout 25th, Walker Buehler was 24th. You can just get some fantastic talents anywhere in that first round.
You just actually brought up a point for me that I wanted to discuss. What do you think about the Orioles having potentially too many outfielders at this point with the way that DJ Stewart has been performing, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Mountcastle? What do you think about that with guys like Heston Kjerstad, Yusniel Diaz waiting in the wings?
It's a tough situation for the Orioles, but out of all of the problems your team can have, depth is the best one.
Yep.
And the Orioles have the outfield depth. They don't have a lot of infield depth. They are starting to build that pitching depth right now. Kevin Smith, another acquisition that kind of just furthers that. But depth, like I said, great to have. And they do have Diaz, and they do have Santander, and all of these guys that
Austin
play
Hayes.
corner. Austin Hayes, right. But even the corner outfielders, I think, are a more important discussion. Tyler Nevin is another guy that probably projects as a corner outfielder they just picked up. And they're going to have to start making decisions at some point soon about who is going to be starting there. I think it's hard to do it, but a prospect for prospect trade probably would be the best idea for the Orioles right now. Like I said, they lack that infield depth. So why not go try to get an infielder for Yusniel Diaz or an infielder for even DJ Stewart? You can try to flip him. It's probably the decision they have to make because they are not going to have many spots to put these outfielders in. I mean, you can only have one DH. So it's, you can have 2 corner outfielders and a center fielder. The Orioles, I'm not sure they have an answer in center field right now. So maybe a prospect for prospect trade happens. They have a lot of them, but it's a good problem to have.
Can you imagine this team trading DJ Stewart after, can you imagine me telling you 2 weeks ago that this team is going to trade DJ Stewart for a premier pitcher or a premier infielder?
I mean, no. DJ Stewart is a good storyline to talk about right now because this is a guy that 2 weeks ago, and DJ Babe Stewart, it's true. DJ is Babe Ruth 2.0. Obviously a high draft pick. Dan Duquette might have reached for him a little bit. He was a great hitter at Florida State, but just kind of came on in the later part of his career and put up really nice power numbers at Florida State. He was an okay minor league hitter. He hit pretty well once he got to Bowie and then hit really well last year at AAA. Earned him his promotion. He's had some struggles in the major leagues. He was actually a reverse splits guy. Really hit lefties really well. But now I think it's kind of evened out a little bit. And he comes up here and he goes 0 for 16 and then hits 6 home runs in 6 games, which is just incredible. I mean, that there is almost nobody who's ever done that kind of thing. And, 2 weeks ago, I was all on the board of just DFAing DJ Stewart. I don't think he had a future here. I wasn't sure of what his place was here. And they do have so much outfield depth that I didn't think he was needed. All of a sudden, he comes out and he hits every single mistake. And he hits every bad pitch in the zone. He hits every curveball. He hits every fastball. He's doing everything. He's mashing the ball. And it's completely changed his outlook to this point, which is just kind of nuts.
Yeah, I think I was a big fan, coming out of college there at FSU, but kind of looked like an analytics pick at the time. I mean, he was just a guy who just got on base a lot. He did have power. He had the really weird crouch stance that he had with Florida State. But yeah, he was somebody that I kind of was under the impression they were going to DFA him after that basically failed first stint um, with the team, and I think Elias has shown a lot of courage to bring him back up, to say we're not going to give up on this guy just yet. And obviously, he comes back and he sets the world on fire, and they must have some magic sauce there down in Bowie.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Bowie in a second, but I just want to say with Stewart, I think Stewart kind of fits the model of a player that rebuilding teams want to try. Rebuilding teams don't want to DFA a player after a few weeks of struggles. And, personally, if I were the GM, I probably would have. But, Mike Elias gave him another chance, and that's really benefiting the Orioles. And DJ Stewart was a big reason the Orioles were in that playoff race for just a few days there. But yeah, Bowie they are pumping out incredible players. And besides Chris Davis, that's a conversation for a different day. Chris Davis is back. But they've been producing some incredible talent. And, obviously, it probably would have been better developmentally for these minor league guys to have a minor league season. Obviously, we all know that. But Bowie's been doing a great job. And I'm sure Chris Holt and all the other guys down there are, really helping these guys get up to speed and be ready for the majors.
So we do want to transition a little bit to this week's every week segment, the who's hot and who's not. Obviously, we already talked about DJ Stewart, getting all the accolades. I would have to throw my hat in the ring for Dean Kramer with his two lights out starts. He had 7 strikeouts back-to-back starts against the Yankees. Really encouraging. He's not the team's number 1 pitching prospect. He's not the team's number 2 pitching prospect. So I think if you see the 2 guys ahead of him, add him to the rotation, some other guys, I think you could look at a promising young starting rotation.
Yeah, Dean's a good pick. Obviously, he's been really good. I want to see the sustainability. I hope that he pitches 4 or 5 more good games this season, if he can get that. Probably not at this point. Maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games at most. But yeah, he's been fantastic. And facing the Yankees twice is really hard. I will say that's, even though they're without Aaron Judge and Stanton and a lot of their best hitters, it's still a hard thing to do, to face the same team you faced in your major league debut just a couple days later. So I got to give Dean Kramer props for that one. But who's hot? Obviously, DJ Stewart. We just talked about that. I think that who's not is a more interesting conversation for today.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Asher Wojciechowski for this one, especially just because he got bumped out of the rotation. Now he's kind of the mop-up duty guy / swingman / long reliever. Comes into the game, last night and gives up 6 runs. Not a good look. Definitely not going to, curry any favor with Brandon Hyde. I think if he, makes any attempt or any plea to stay on this team past this year, I think now's the time to do it. I kind of think he's running out of time. And he's a good guy, so I wish him well. I hope that he, can recover from this. But for this week, at least, he's been pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, it's to lose your starting rotation spot's kind of rough, but he had a 5.7 ERA, I think, when he was bumped out of the rotation. And, he's a little bit of an older guy. He's not really someone who factors into the Orioles' future. So the DFA is probably coming. The writing's kind of on the wall there. He moved out of the rotation. He gave up 6 runs last night. It's kind of been a rough for him. I do feel bad for him because he is a nice guy. And I think he's actually provided the Orioles some solid value for a waiver claim. I think that, they really have he's really given them some nice innings. But for who's not, I want to have a whole conversation here about Rio Ruiz, because he had a really good hit streak. I think it was about 10 or 11 games. But overall, his defense has been not hot. I mean, it has been unbelievably bad. And I just want to get your thoughts on why, not DJ, but Rio Ruiz has had such horrible defense at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the old adage, the old cliche of putting too much pressure on yourself. I don't really know if it's that. I think it's just maybe this is who he is. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're just saying kind of a fluky couple of games. He started out the season so hot. He was going to be, the first 10 to 15 games, he was the third baseman of the future. He's had his moments since then for sure. Had a big 3-run home run, I believe, the other night. But I don't know what it is. I really don't. I think he's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. He started out in Houston, then to Atlanta, now to the Orioles. I just don't know if he's going to ever find the consistency to be a good bona fide major league player.
His bat isn't bad. I mean, his bat is a little below average, I would say, as far as everything goes: power, contact, vision. He's pretty below average. But I think right now his bat is fine for the Orioles, the 2020 Orioles. I think it's fine. The defense, though, started out as looking like a Gold Glove guy. I mean, he was unbelievable. He was, I think, like third or fourth in DRS, which is fantastic. He had high outs above average. He was looking really good. And then he comes out these last couple games and he's making huge errors in huge spots. And I think that's kind of inexcusable when the Orioles, again, are in a playoff race. Be making these errors in these big spots, and it's just kind of really hurt them. I think his D-WAR has gone way down in the past couple games, so it's kind of been rough for him. I hope the Orioles will look at some other options next year. I want to see Bannon. I want to see McCoy. A few of these other options the Orioles might have, but Rio Ruiz is really not cutting it for me defensively.
Yeah, defensively, definitely not there. A little bit below average, as you mentioned. I'm looking at his Baseball Savant page right now. Pretty much all in the blues, that he's under the 50% percentile mark. He is in the 65th percentile in terms of barrel percentage. That's it's definitely something to be made note of. And his outs above average, he's also negative there as well. So not great. Not great.
It's definitely been a decline. It's gotten a lot worse for sure. So I just hope he turns it around and proves that he belongs here.
Yep. So we did want to talk a little bit as well about the whole Bowie situation, where these players are basically working out if they're not on the active roster. We've seen Dean Kramer come up from there. We've seen DJ Stewart, various number of other players. What are your thoughts there, Zach, on what they're doing down there in Bowie?
I mean, it's been incredible, the work they're doing down there, because the guys have been coming up and have been pitching really well and hitting really well. DJ Stewart looks like he was like fixed down there. I don't know what happened. I don't know what they fed DJ Stewart and Bowie, but he came out and it's magic sauce, like you said. It's been unbelievable, and I hope they can keep it going with some more of these guys, and they're making players that really don't have that much talent look really good, and that's really exciting to see. Maybe we should try this out with a few of our more struggling guys, like Cole Saucer or someone else like that. It could be optioned down there for a few games to figure out what they're doing wrong. But Bowie's look really good. I've heard Adley Rutschman is hitting really well in Bowie, which is really good to hear. And I think anyone who comes from there at this point can probably make a difference. They've been using the analytics, and I'm sure a lot of great coaching down there. And they've been producing some solid players. Dean Kramer has just looked like a big league pitcher up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who. Maybe you can correct me on this. I don't really know who the hitting coordinator is down there. Do you know that?
I believe it's I think it's all of the minor league hitting instructors for all of the teams. I think they're all down there. So Aberdeen's and Fredericks and all of the guys should be down there, but I could be wrong on that one. It may not be every single one, but it's probably about 3 or 4.
Well, I did want to discuss at least a little bit about Chris Holt, who is basically the minor league pitching coordinator. He taught the grip and how to throw the change up to John Means. He's been instrumental in a lot of the success of some of our prospects, some of the minor league players, such as Cody Sedlock. So I think they got a good one there. I think they need to hold on to Chris Holt as long as they possibly can. Maybe you can keep promoting him just to keep him within the organization. But that's the foundation of any good team. Any good team needs good pitching, a lot of pitching depth, and they need to develop that. So the Orioles have always struggled with that. It's never come easy to them. They had Mike Messina, they had Eric Bedard, who were homegrown, but other than that, it's not been like that guy, that absolute all-star pitcher year in and year out. So I think he has been instrumental, and I think obviously what they're doing on the hitting side is working as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chris Holt has been credited for a lot of the successes that Orioles pitchers have had, and rightfully so. Like you said, taught John Means his changeup, and John Means has been really good ever since then. He struggled a little bit this year, but he's starting to get back on track. Chris Holt really looks like a genius, and Mike Elias has hired a lot of really good instructors in the minor leagues, and this all goes into player development and building this elite talent pipeline, like Elias always mentions. And you just got to keep these guys around, hopefully, and keep hiring elite talent to help out the elite playing talent in the minors.
Yeah, agreed. Should be exciting for 2021. I think as we discussed on the show. If this team does not make the playoffs, that is not yet set in stone. There's still 15 games to play. But if they don't, I think there is a lot to build on. I think the season is going to be a defining moment of the rebuild. I think we're going to look back on this, 4, 5, 6 years down the line and say that is where it all started. That is what gave Orioles fans a lot of hope. And that's all I have to say on that. But anything else you wanted to talk about, Zach?
Yeah, there's a few more things. One thing I want to say about what you just said is that the worst is behind us. I think that's a clear thing now that we're seeing, is that the worst is definitely behind us. We won't have to see, Jimmy Yacobonis or, any of the swingman types that were starting for us last year and not really major league type players. I think we're kind of past all that. We're going to be seeing more and more prospects and more talent come through. I think realistically, the Orioles could try to compete next year. I think they will try. I don't know if they will, but I think they're going to at least make an effort, maybe make an interesting free agent splash, maybe a 5, maybe 10 million average salary. I don't know. We'll just have to see how it goes. But we also do have a few questions that we got from our listeners here to answer. So the first one is from our good friend Justin Labor, and he wants to know what's going to happen with Hayes when he comes back. So Matt, what are your thoughts on that so far?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. He's kind of been lost in the shuffle a little bit now. Austin Hayes obviously going down with that rib injury. Really couldn't swing a bat, but now he's working out in Baltimore. So we should expect to see him, I would assume, this week, probably at some point. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where he fits in, because Cedric Mullins has been playing really well. He's probably your starting center fielder. But we've all been hoping for Austin Hayes to stay healthy. We just want him to stay healthy because we know when he's fully healthy what he brings to the table. He started off really, really slow this year, kind of picked it up a little bit before he got hurt. But yeah, I think he's going to fit in. I just question how many at-bats he's going to get.
Yeah, I really don't think the Orioles should rush him back. Make sure he's 100% healthy, because this guy does get injured so much, and he really hasn't had too many healthy seasons in the minors for the Orioles at all. So, once he comes back, probably ease him in a little bit. Cedric Mullins has been really tearing the cover off the ball. He's been playing, kind of okay center field. His throws have been pretty bad, but his range has been there. Austin Hayes will probably do okay. Maybe hit a little bit. He was kind of hot before he got injured. I think he was hitting 280 in like the last 11 games before he was injured. So he was playing pretty well. I don't really expect him to tear the cover off the ball, but I'm excited to see him get back. He's one of my favorite personal players, and I really do hope he performs a little bit. We do have one more question from the Bird's Eye View, another Orioles pod that is very popular, and they wanted to know, is it okay to cry about losing this weekend? Asking for a friend. It is absolutely okay, because I think all of Birdland is pretty upset about this one.
There's no crying in baseball. Jimmy Dugan told me that, so
okay, got it.
No, I think I think it is. It's disappointing to drop 3 of the first 4. We had playoff aspirations. They're probably dampened a little bit, but if they can win the game tomorrow, there's a little bit of hope there. So yeah, I think it's okay to be upset. Normal stage of grief.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think that going back to what I said before about this being the most fun team the Orioles have had in literal years. It's been, people have kind of fallen in love with this team and just kind of been excited about them and wanting to succeed. But this outcome that we might see here of missing the playoffs probably wasn't really unexpected. So maybe not too upset about it, but it is a disappointing end for a really fun team.
Yeah. Like we mentioned, not going to close the book quite yet on the season. I think by the time,
for sure.
I think by the time we do our podcast next week, we should have a pretty good idea of either way, what's going to happen. But, high hopes for 2021. If we're doing another 16-game playoff, I think this team is absolutely in the hunt for a playoff spot. I don't think that changes. I don't think you're going to see another team in the next 4 to 5 years that's going to be under 70 wins. I feel somewhat confident saying that. 65 to 70 wins. So, it's all full steam ahead here. We still got a lot of prospects to add. We still got some drafts to complete, and the development's there. It's there. We've proved it.
That's all I have, Matt. I am. That's all I had to say. I'm here.
Okay.
but that's pretty much wraps it up for me. And hopefully keep playing at least at the okay level that we have been these past couple weeks.
Agreed. So yeah, if you have any more, questions that you want to send to us, we do our show weekly here. So we will always take questions. If you're watching on YouTube Live, we will take your questions as well. We would appreciate if you would, tell a friend about the show. If you're, into a few different Orioles podcasts, or if you're looking to share with your friends, we would appreciate that as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're on Spotify. We're also on iTunes. You can leave us a 5-star on iTunes and a review. We would definitely appreciate that. And we'll give you a shout out on the podcast. That's always fun. And if you're listening, this is on YouTube, like I mentioned. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.